Hey, what's up guys, it's HDL, and I decided to make this video because now that Sonic Mania is out, a lot of people are dipping their toes into Sonic speedrunning for the first time, and there have been a lot of questions about the spin dashing. In particular, how do I rev well? I do have a spin dashing guide video that I made some time ago. It was mostly for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but it does apply to Sonic Mania as well. The only real difference that you have to keep in mind is that Sonic Mania is actually much more lenient on the release timing of your spin dash. So instead of being frame perfect, you now have 3 frames to get a perfect spin dash speed. And for slower speeds, you actually have larger windows. So getting consistent speeds is very easy in Mania, but there's still the issue of revving up, and that's what a lot of people are having trouble with. So first things first, what I do want to mention is that if you want to maximize your efficiency and your speed with revving up, you will need a controller that has at least 3 buttons lined up. If you have something that's like the Super Nintendo style layout, you know, anything like a PS4 controller, Xbox, Joy-Cons, you know, something like that, you're gonna have a lot of trouble trying to do this. Even though those controllers, you kinda can have 3 buttons lined up, they're in a very awkward position, and it's just not really conducive towards this particular technique. Bearing in mind that the original Sonic and Sonic 2, actually, which pioneered the spin dash, was designed for a Genesis controller that has 3 buttons lined up. So with that being said, I want to show you here a max speed spin dash with frame advance. So I'm going to release this, and I'm not going to hold any direction, just to show you how far he goes. So he goes in between that tree and the sunflower. And this is what I would get from my usual spin dash technique. So there you go. Very easily I got the perfect speed there. So what does that look like visually? Well, as I mentioned in my spin dash guide video, there are a few different techniques that you can use, but I didn't actually show them visually, so I'm going to show them right here. So this is my arcade stick. These 3 buttons are the ones that jump and rev. Anything like a keyboard or a Genesis controller or Saturn controller, GameCube controller, things like that have 3 buttons lined up, you'll be able to do these techniques, with one exception. I will cover that one last. But first, the most common technique will be the 6 Rev Piano Roll. So generally what most people will do, just because it's like the most natural thing, is to piano roll 3 buttons, one after the other in quick succession, and then do it a second time. That way you get 6 inputs. So that looks like this. Now you can see I didn't quite go as far. Now why is that? Well, there could be a few reasons. One reason is that maybe my release timing wasn't that good, but given how I mentioned that it is easier in Mania, that's unlikely now. Another reason is that I could have accidentally pressed 2 buttons on the same frame. If that happens, you will not get 2 different rev inputs. It will only count 1. They have to be on separate frames. Another possibility is that there was just too much time in between your button presses. So if you do this too slow, you could be wasting frames. Now that's not as much of an issue in Mania as it was in the classic games, but that is something to keep in mind. If your revs are too slow, that can happen. So how do we counteract that? Well, in order to maximize the chances that we do get a perfect spin dash, you can actually add more than 6 inputs. 6 is only the minimum that you need to get the full speed. However, if you press more than one button on the same frame, you'll run into the aforementioned issue. So we can do what's called a 7 tap. So that's another a method you can do. Any controller with a 3-button layout, you can do this version of it. So you can actually start by just pushing one button and then do the standard 6-button piano roll. So one button just to put you into that rev state, and then the 3 after. That'll give you a 7 tap. And you see I very easily got over there with a 7 tap. And what that does is that it gives you an extra button press for just one additional rev. So if at any point during that sequence I accidentally press 2 buttons on the same frame, I have an extra button input to kind of cover my my bases. It's very easy to do this on Genesis controller, GameCube, keyboard, whatever. Bearing in mind that you will spend slightly extra time revving when you do this, which does add up. But I just wanted to show that method, just so you guys can be aware. The method that I use, it's called Glissando, or Gliss for short. It's something that I've only really been able to do successfully on an arcade stick. You cannot really do it well on a controller. You can sort of do it on a keyboard, but it's very awkward. It depends on the type of keyboard you have and which keys you're actually using. And even then, it does feel kind of weird. I imagine there are certain keyboards where it might feel okay. But for the most part, it is not really going to be that effective unless you have something like this. So basically the concept of it is, since these buttons have very low resistance, like it doesn't take much force for me to actually push the button down, I can actually push them from the side by sliding my finger across like that. So very easily I can just slide across. The basic concept is I can slide across once, then slide across again, and then slide across a 3rd time. And if I do that, I can very easily get more than 6 inputs, and I can do so faster than even the standard 6-tap piano roll technique. So let's get a good position here. So what that looks like, and you can use one finger. I tend to use 2 just because it's more comfortable for me to do it that way, but you can use one finger to do that. Let's see. That should look good. Alright, so this would look like this. As you can see, got there quite easily. Now, because you are revving extremely quickly when doing this technique, it is possible to press more than one button on the same frame. So that's why I do what I call a 9 tap. So I get 9 inputs by doing this. So I just basically go 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. And if I press more than one button on the same frame a couple times, I have some extra inputs to cover myself. An alternative method you can use is either like a 7 or an 8 tap, so you can actually go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Alright, so that is one method you can use. You can also do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So whatever method you find more comfortable, just keep in mind that the 9 tap is not really any slower. Then it's very marginally slower than doing like a 7 tap. It's very negligible, and the extra inputs are going to basically guarantee that your spin dash has 100% charge. So that's basically what the spin dash techniques look like. Remember, the standard that a lot of people use for any kind of 3-button layout controller is the 6-tap piano roll, so like that. Keep in mind that 6 is only the minimum. That's what that looks like. Then you have the 7-tap that also has that 6 button piano roll, so just tap one button and then 1 2, one button, 1 2. So that's what that looks like. And then there is the gliss technique, which is the back and forth. That's what that looks like. Lastly, before I cut the video, I do want to mention that you never want to do this. You don't want to mash. Don't mash. Have a technique that'll give you consistent inputs every time, because that not only are you going to be able to reliably get a certain number of inputs, but you are also going to guarantee that your release timing is on point. And remember, your release timing ultimately determines what your spin dash speed actually is. You can mash as much as you like, and if your release timing is bad, you're still going to get a slow spin dash. So don't ever do that, and that's actually going to hurt your fingers if you play for a long time doing that anyway, so I wouldn't recommend it. I would also not recommend doing this. Don't do that. Unless you're fooling around, but don't do, under normal circumstances, you want to make sure that you have a fixed calculated technique that is going to give you the same number of inputs every time. Alright, so that pretty much covers the visual aid for the spin dash. If you haven't already, please go see my guide to spin dashing, so you can see some extra info like the subpixel values and such. Most of that still applies to Sonic Mania and Sonic 2 as well. If you have any questions, you're still confused about something, feel free to reach out to me and I'll be happy to oblige. So have a good one and good spin dashing.